Welcome to our onion painting composition, and this tutorial is about brown onion painting. We have red onion finished, and now it's time for brown onion right beside it. But let's do a color study page before. I have a real onion in front of me which is very similar. Then I have lemon yellow, Indian yellow, alizarin crimson, sap green and manganese violet for my watercolor mixes. Starting with first mix lemon yellow together with alizarin crimson, painting out, and I see that this onion has a lot of yellow and red pigment. Second is the same base, but I'm adding a little bit of sap green to lemon yellow and alizarin crimson. Third, lemon yellow, alizarin crimson, and manganese violet. Painting out a little bit more. Fourth, lemon yellow together with alizarin crimson and perlin maroon. This is more deeper color. Alizarin crimson with a little touch of lemon yellow. I really like the combination of these two. And doing a very quick and loose painting just to check watercolors, check where to leave light, how to approach this onion. This color study page painting should be very loose, quick, approximately 10 minutes long. Don't be too focused on the outcome of the onion, but more focused on color study. Let's start the painting process. Before starting, I want to erase more of graphite lines because there's a lot of yellow watercolor mixes in this for this onion, and as yellow pigment is super transparent, no matter how many layers, dark graphite lines will be visible. That's why I'm removing some more, but really careful without strong rubbing of the paper, because it can be easily damaged if you push a razor too hard. Now with round synthetic brush, I'm applying water to the whole surface of the onion skin that we see in front on the main part of the onion. The bottom part, there's the broken part of the skin, and that area I'm leaving out and not painting. I'm taking watercolor mix of lemon yellow, alizarin crimson and perlin maroon, starting from the darker area that is the lower part of this onion and down. Also remember to leave light area wider than it appears in the reference, and I'm pushing watercolors towards the lighter part. Water is just enough so that watercolors can be moved. They are not floating, as you can see from this video. The paper is just slightly moist. Also, upper part of the onion is also darker in the shadow. Open reference right beside the tutorial or on the other gadget and follow along to where the tonal values and different color tones are. This onion, it looks easy, but there are some complex steps and places. To get it look realistic and round, we need to really see where are different tonal values. Adding lemon yellow to my mixing palette and lower part of this onion, I apply really transparent amount of lemon yellow. Everything with first layers is super transparent. We want to build layers to make this onion really realistic and beautiful. Next layers are applied after onion is completely dry. The paper surface is completely dry. Using round synthetic brush with a little amount of water. And again, starting from the darker part of this onion skin, using alizarin crimson, lemon yellow, and perlin maroon mix, or just simple alizarin crimson with lemon yellow. From the beginning, this onion looked completely brown, and I will be making a lot of brown watercolor mixes, but as I started with lemon yellow and alizarin crimson, I instantly noticed that this onion is more of yellow and red color rather than brown. This really like golden brown color, which can be achieved with yellow and red pigment. Middle part of the onion has darker part, as we see from the reference, and then there's the shiny part on the lower and lighter part on the upper part of this onion. But everything else is very beautiful golden color, lighter, darker. Everything is transparent. My layers are so light, and I'm painting over this white shiny part of the upper onion part with lemon yellow, alizarin crimson, and manganese violet. We have only on the bottom part the little shiny spot, but all the other lighter parts are not completely white. There is some color tone, but as I'm adding those layers, they are so light that even the lighter part is showing through those layers. If you will paint with dark and saturated watercolor mix, you will just block everything and everything will look completely flat, heavy. Paint with light layers. Try to teach yourself to paint transparently. You will see how your painting changes. And patience with applying many layers. Now this is the part where we have the darkest spots on the onion skin. Adding Perylene Violet to my watercolor mixing palette. Some parts where we have darker folds or little things that are like at the very bottom of the onion, there are little particles that are really darker. That's where I will be using this Perylene Violet color. Painting with finer tip brush, constantly checking with the reference. All information that I need is in the reference. On the dry surface, applying next transparent layer of watercolors. We are slowly building layers, building up color, building up tonal values to get this onion look realistic. Keeping light areas light, more darkness to this darker part of the onion, and applying with round synthetic brush. We have a whole quite big surface of this onion to work on. Round synthetic brush does perfectly here. Now I'm adding permanent rose, clean, small amount of permanent rose, and in some lighter parts, but in some, not everywhere, I want to add a pink color. As the more I look on the reference photo, the more I start to notice some notions of colors. And here I noticed in the lighter parts that there are some pink color there. And when I'm adding something new, I'm adding in some places. It's not like everything looks pink. No, it doesn't. But the lightest part, as it is the cool area, I noticed that there are some notions of pink. More layers to the lower part where I am using alizarin crimson lemon yellow, or alizarin crimson lemon yellow and perylene maroon, a very golden brownish watercolor mix, with round synthetic brush for smoother layers and still painting transparently. Everything is painted super transparently for the richness of this painting. Smoothing the applied layer towards the lighter part. Adding a little bit more of alizarin crimson with lemon yellow. And I also have a mix right beside lemon yellow, alizarin crimson and sap green. And adding another layer to this darker area. There's more intense brown watercolor mix, and when you add to yellow and red green, you will get brown watercolor mix. With finer tip brush, adding finer details to upper part of the onion where the skin is more folded with little folds, and that's where we are also adding finer lines, finer details. Taking alizarin crimson with a little touch of main watercolor mix, using finer tip brush, little touch also of perylene violet, just to have a slightly darker watercolor mix, but still in the same color tones as we have. And now with the fine lines, I'm looking at reference and adding those beautiful onion lines that we see on the onion skin. You can practice finer lines on a separate piece of paper before you go to your painting. And I'm painting really thin and super light. So in case if I'm, I don't know, maybe wrong with direction of the line, I can easily go over with round synthetic brush and smooth that line. If you will paint too dark that line, that it's not possible to remove it. Also, where we have the lighter part, though, in that area lines are also lighter. In the shadow, lines are slightly darker. And then take a look also at the secondary lines between main lines. They are like intersecting with each other, like little cobwebs. That's what I'm also creating, and you can go with detailing here more accurate. Pause the video and really dive in with these lines. They will help you make this onion look more realistic, more natural. Lemon yellow and alizarin crimson, and going over to add another layer of watercolors, washing my brush, cleaning in paper towel, and smoothing the applied layer. I'm already quite happy with how this onion looks. I have a beautiful, very soft shine on the onion surface. I can see the round form of this onion, details, lines, adding less layers, finishing up a little bit more intensity to the shadow area, but the lightest part, that little shiny spot, is left completely white, as is the paper. A little bit more details on the lower bottom part of this onion, and I'm ready to move on to the green part. Greens here are more and slightly different from the red onion. I'm cleaning my color palette. You can take other mixing palette or use the same. Starting with sap green, and the color of the greens are also different from the red onion. Adding lemon yellow to sap green, a little bit more, and the second will be perylene green for the darker shadow areas. Washing brush and taking lemon yellow to perylene green. It's very warm and beautiful, vivid green watercolor mix. You can add a really small touch of red to make it more earthy. I'm adding a little touch of blue to make it a little bit cooler. And now using finer tip brush and a very light amount of watercolor mixes that we used, I'm painting the lower part of these greens. We have them, it looks like white area with some visible lines, but it is not white. If we have the background of this reference completely white, then we see that those lower part of greens are very, very light, pale green color. That's what I'm painting right now. Super light and pale green watercolor mix of perylene green, lemon yellow, and little touch of ultramarine blue. Starting with greens. Applying water just enough so that paper can be slightly moist. And again, the approach is the same, transparently applying watercolors that we pre-mixed, starting with perylene green, lemon yellow, and ultramarine blue. Trying to apply it very smoothly and careful not to go over the edges. We want to keep those greens nice and fine. They are not so thick like the red onion greens. They are more in quantity, but slightly thinner in size, smaller in size. And the lower part of almost each green is more yellowish. For that, I'm taking sap green together with lemon yellow. Also, the very tip of each green is slightly more yellow than the majority of green part is this darker perylene green watercolor mix, and again the lower part where the greens are growing out, there we see more of yellow color. Moving on to the next one, approach is the same, applying small amount of water, pale transparent amount of watercolors, and adding yellowish green to the lower part. Here I got a little bit confused how my greens are going, so I erased one line and made it a little bit smaller, closer to the left side. And the more areas are to paint, the more accurate you need to be and slow and observing reference. My greens, I noticed that are slightly different from the reference photo. I guess when I was transferring sketch, I got somewhere lost of line, but I'm working on what I have and continuing to paint to finish the green that I already painted, and I'm making it connected behind the front green that I have right now. With the darker watercolor mix, painting shadow and smoothing. Moving on to next layers of these greens, and here is required a lot of observation of the reference and applying layers. For now it all looks kind of messy and not quite sure which green goes where, and now's the time to build layers with finer brush strokes, carefully looking which green goes behind which one, making shadow, making beautiful transitions. It's a matter of patiently painting further. Zooming out, adding clean lemon yellow, and in some greens have more yellowish color. We see that in reference. Some are more darker and more cooler green, like perlin green. And when you are adding, for example, now I'm adding yellow, you don't need to add it everywhere. Then everything will look identical, the same, and it's not like it is in nature. Each of these greens are growing separately. One grows faster, one grows slower, and then the color of those greens in life also changes. The one that also grown some faster, they are more already darker. The ones that are just sprouting out, they are more yellowish greener. So think, and it's best to observe the subject from real life, so you see that also in life from one plant there can be different color tones of green, because the life cycles of each section are slightly different and the green color tone changes. Adding more shadows to some areas, building layers, separating greens. Now with very light amount of watercolors, I'm adding shadow to the lightest, these lower part of greens, where they are connected to the onion. We need to separate those areas as well. Here I'm using super light amount of watercolors. Paint shadow area on these lighter parts super slowly, transparently. Zooming in closer so you see how I'm painting these lines. These lines start from the green part and then they go into this white part, painting with the very tip of my watercolor brush. And these lines need to be super fine. Also adding some darker details of Perlin Violet together with Alizarin Crimson to onion skin. Adding Perlin Violet to my mixing palette, super small amount, transparent amount, and a little touch of Alizarin Crimson. And making some little folds and cracks in the skin, some details that we see. This is a nice and fun part to do when you are adding details and you instantly see how this onion is changing and becoming more realistic. But this is only possible if you painted all the time before building that background color. You can't have realistic details on a not painted background at all. If you start straight away with details, then you will not get this effect. This only is achieved if you worked. We are already painting more than 1 hour on this onion. And now at the finishing part, when we are adding details, then it's eventually, oh, it looks like real onion now. Yes, those details made the whole difference. No, we worked not just for nothing. We worked all this time to make now these details look realistic, to make this all possible. It's important to build the background, build the solid base where we can add those details. And also adding more to greens, some precision in shadows, making those edges more precise. Go over each section, check, double check, maybe add details, add some lines, add shadows. Zooming out and looking at the whole composition. I have both onions side by side, almost ready. And now is the time that you can work on both onions. For example, I discovered that the red onion greens need a little bit more of yellow on some green parts, and I'm adding clean, transparent lemon yellow layer, but very small amounts so that my all previous layers are visible through. Maybe we need to add more contrast, maybe some details. This is the part that you can paint on and on. More layers, more time spent. Even this tutorial ends, you can paint extra 20 minutes, extra hour, even 10 hours, and your painting will only become more and more realistic, more and more lifelike. With watercolor painting, botanical watercolor painting, if you are following these transparency techniques, super fine detail techniques, you can paint on and on. I am finishing my painting, my composition. I'm really happy with the result. Onion was on my to-do list for a long time, and I'm happy how this composition turns out. And hope you painted as well. Hope you painted both onions. They are different, and the painting was also slightly different. Hope you learned something new and enjoyed this process. Thank you, and see you in my next tutorials. Bye bye.